Now, some good news for patients living with HIV. Life expectancy is up. That's according to a new study published in the online medical journal Lancet. It says life expectancy among 20-year-old European and North American patients starting treatment has increased by 10 years since the mid-90s. That's thanks to antiretroviral therapy, a treatment for HIV patients that usually involves combining at least 3 drugs. The study's authors say the new findings could help HIV patients find employment and get medical insurance. Well, let's speak to Jonathan Stern now, who is one of the authors of the study. Jonathan, good to have you with us. So this is incredible news that young people now have near normal life expectancy. And this is all because of the enormous improvements in HIV treatment, is it?
That's right. So back in the late 1990s in Europe and North America, combination therapy became available and there were big reductions in mortality in HIV positive people compared to the situation when treatment wasn't available. But those early drugs were toxic, they had side effects, and they had to be taken multiple drugs multiple times a day. And so what we've shown in our study today is that as a result of the steady progress that we've seen over the time since the mid to late 1990s, that mortality has continued to drop, and that patients starting antiretroviral therapy now and in recent years have got near normal life expectancy, providing they can be successfully treated.
It does, though, mean that there are or there will be a greater proportion of older people living with HIV, and that, of course, poses challenges for social welfare systems, healthcare systems. Do you see problems with that in the future?
Well, in principle, I don't think there's any greater problem to have somebody who's aging with HIV than somebody who's aging without HIV, other than the fact that the HIV positive person will keep having to take these combination therapies for the whole of their life. And that could mean that there are difficulties with interactions between the HIV drugs and other drugs. That might mean that the care that they require is more specialized or slightly more complex than for non-HIV positive people. But a big opportunity arising from these therapies is that we now realize that if people are successfully treated, then they're at very low risk of transmitting the virus to somebody else. So the opportunity, if we can get lots and lots of people on treatment, is that firstly, we will enable those people to live normal lives, near normal life expectancy. So we will indeed have many older people with HIV. But on the other hand, there should be fewer new infections, so fewer young people requiring treatment for HIV over very long periods of time.
And your research, of course, looks at HIV patients in Europe and North America. Do we know what the picture is regarding life expectancy in the developing world?
Excuse me. Yes, and there's very good news there. Thanks to an enormous international collaborative effort. Since the early 2000s, combination therapy has been rolled out to now 12 million people in sub-Saharan Africa. Sub-Saharan Africa is, of course, the area with the largest number of HIV positive people. So there's been a tremendous success story there, but it's also the case that there are many millions of people who are either not diagnosed in that region or who have been diagnosed but have not yet accessed treatment. So there's been fantastic success, but there's also a long way to go.
Yeah, and just briefly, I mean, we're talking about living with HIV and treating the symptoms of HIV. Do you think there's ever going to be a drug or a vaccine which will prevent contracting HIV and eradicate the disease altogether?
Well, there's 3 possible answers to that question. So firstly, we already have a drug tenofovir that can be that can be taken by people who are at risk but have not been yet been infected. So it's been now demonstrated that if you can take pre-exposure prophylaxis, and that's an effective way to protect yourself against infection. And there's good evidence now for that. The second point is that, as I think, which is what you allude to, is that these combination therapies suppress viral replication, but the virus remains in your body. And if you stop taking the combination therapy, then it starts to replicate again. So there's an enormous international research effort at the moment trying to look for ways to find a curative therapy, that is to eliminate HIV completely from the body. We don't yet know whether that effort will be successful. And finally, again, as you mentioned, there's an ongoing search for an HIV vaccine. There's potential trials underway, but we don't yet have a timescale for the successful introduction of an HIV vaccine.